In this project, you'll be working with the search and the sort algorithms, just as you've been doing all along in this module. So the first thing you're going to do is create an input file named flights.txt, and this file contains two pieces of information. You're going to be tracking flight numbers with a corresponding number of passengers. So you'll be working with parallel arrays. There will be two parallel arrays. The first array should be an array of strings that stores the flight number, and the second array should be an array of integers that stores a corresponding number of passengers. Your program should work for any file containing up to 50 pairs of flight number and passenger counts. Okay, so the file should look like this, right? So here is some sample data, and you can create a file that has, I just used a bogus airline here. So I just did BD and then space and then a 4-digit flight number. Then press enter and enter in the corresponding number of passengers on the flight. And then again, same airline abbreviation is what I used. Then again, a space, and then again, the flight number. Press enter, enter in the number of passengers, press enter, etc. So what's important here is, what you should be noticing is the flight number is a string, okay? And you should use this, you should read this using a getLine statement, and the getLine because there's a space here. And getLine will read until it encounters that enter key there. It includes the enter key. Then here you should read this into an integer array, and this is a whole number, so you can read it just as you would a traditional cin statement, just changing the source as being your file. Okay, and I just have some important information that you need to know. So I'm requiring 5 functions. The first function, just like in the last project, should open the file and then do some error processing. So check to see that it opened correctly. The second function should read and store data in your array. So you're going to use a loop to read until you reach the end of file. So again, you should have done this in your previous project. What's changing is what goes inside of your loop. So just as before, you should have a counter, keeping a count of everything you're reading every time you loop through. Remember that instead of doing 1 read, you're now going to be doing 2, because you're going to read the flight number first. And as I said, you should be doing this using a getLine and store it into an array of strings. Next, you're going to read the number of passengers. And the number of passengers is a whole number. Again, read it using a traditional input statement. So I gave you an example right here. So if you assume that your file variable is input file, you're going to read into, let's assume your array is called passengers, and let's assume that the counter you're using in the loop is called counter, and that's your loop control variable. Now, here if you don't put in this little tiny statement here, you will encounter an error. So what happens is you're going to read that flight number, then you're going to read the passengers, then you'll loop back up to, you'll increment your counter, loop back up to the top, and do that same process again. The problem is that when you perform this statement here, what happens here is at the end of the integer, it'll stop reading. Right? The input statement stops, but what's left is the enter key, that new line character. So when you loop back up to the top and you perform the next getLine, the getLine will find that little new line character at the end and try to read it. And if it does, you'll end up with, it won't make any sense. You'll end up with a lot of errors. So what you need to do is right after that input statement, you need to include what's called an ignore statement. So it's in file.ignore. And what happens is it reads the new line character, it discards the new line character, so that then when you loop back up to the top to perform the next getLine, you'll be fine. So take the time to read this slide right now. Pause the video if you have to. Make sure you understand the steps, right? So step 1, read the flight number using getLine. Step 2, read the passengers using a traditional input statement. Step 3, ignore, and then you can increment your counter and loop back up to the top. A couple other items I mentioned about no more than 50 pairs, keeping a counter, reading until end of file. The third function is a display function. So here I want you to display in a table format the flight number and then the corresponding number of passengers. The next function should be a sort function, and the sort algorithm you use can either be the bubble sort or the selection sort, whichever, as long as it is an algorithm that you learned in class. And you'll find the code in your book. You'll find it in the samples. A couple things here. Display the data in the arrays before the sort, so call your display function. Then sort the data by flight number. But remember that when you're sorting parallel arrays, you have to sort the data in each of the arrays. So first, perform the swap on the flight number array, and then perform the swap on the passenger number array. And then last, display the data after you've called the sort, and that's because you want to prove that the sort actually worked correctly. Last function should be a search function. You may prompt the user for a flight number to search for, and you can do that either in main or in the search function, whichever. But again, you know, for the search and the sort, you must use an algorithm that was taught in class. Just some things that you would have seen in the previous assignment. Your program must be your own, no code that you got online or through an AI chatbot. Use code that was demonstrated in class, that code that you'll find in your book. These algorithms are in your book. There's no reason why you shouldn't use them. It's a great resource. Make sure that you're meeting the program requirements, which is I do look for formatting, spacing, make it easy to read. The input file must be named flights.txt. Your main program should call all the functions, and I'll be looking for the parameters, right? Your choice of value parameters, reference parameters, and because we're working with arrays, the constant reference parameters. Make sure you're including comments throughout and for each function definition. Test your data, right? Test with the file. So again, this slide is the same as in the last project. And the only thing I would say is if you do have any questions, please contact me. Don't just submit the file.